Hey, everybody, it's Coach Bronson here, and we're going to have a quick discussion with one of the cool dudes that I met in Costa Rica a couple weeks ago, Dr. Tony Hampton. Dr. Hampton, you're from Chicago, right?
I am a Chicago guy. Bulls, Bears. I hate to say Bears, but yeah.
We had a really good time getting to know each other, spending some time talking about different things, and there's very close similarities and overlap in the things that we do. I'm more fitness-based, you're medical, obviously, but we are both concerned about metabolic health and metabolic function.
No doubt about
Could
it.
you give me a little bit of rundown? First of all, before we get into the main question that I'm going to ask you, could you explain what is metabolic function? Because I think a lot of people think metabolism is just how we burn fuel.
Yeah, I just want my body to function efficiently. I want my blood pressure, my blood sugar. I want my cholesterol to be good. I want my waist to be good. So for me, it's all about how is my body efficiently managing all the duties that it has to manage. Rather, is how it manages the hormones, my circulatory system. I just want all of those things to work well together because, believe it or not, they're all interconnected. And if you don't believe it's interconnected, most of your mood hormones are made in your gut. So who knew, right? So if
Yeah.
that's true, then we need to be metabolically healthy so that all the things that have to work together do a better job. And if that occurs, then we're not likely to get metabolic health conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, dementia, even cancer is a metabolic condition. So that's kind of how my brain processes that.
Okay. And there's a reason why all of those things are bundled under the term metabolic syndrome, right? I mean, that's dysfunction of your metabolism.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. All right. So why is focusing on that more important than just focusing on fat loss? Because most people come to me and the first thing they talk about is I'm trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
So, how do we explain to people that weight loss is cool and it's great, but there's probably a little bit more to that?
Yeah, I think
what are some things they need to think about?
there's some things you got to think about. Now, I learned some of this in when I got board certified in obesity medicine. I learned a little bit about how the body works more than I had learned in medical school. And and if you just think about fat loss in general, and let's assume that metabolic health is important to you, you don't want to have a heart attack, stroke, dementia, high risk for cancer, then you want to do more than just focus on one aspect, which is your weight. You want to think about other factors like your good cholesterol, if you want to call it that, the HDL. And when you think about metabolic health, you want that number to be high. You want your triglycerides, which is the fat in your blood, you want that to be low. You want your blood pressure to be okay. You want your blood sugar to be okay. So what I like about metabolic health is that it puts you on a path to focus on more aspects that give you better return on investment. If you just focus on weight, you're going to miss all these other. And if that's the number one, if poor metabolic health is the number one cause of most chronic conditions, we need to focus on that. So I think so for all the ladies in particular, and some of the guys who are worried about that scale, if you come to me and you weigh, let's just say 300, and you don't lose a lot of weight, but all those numbers get better, I'm going to feel much better about your health than that weight in a large proportion. So the second thing I think about is I think that there are people, particularly in in certain communities, like in the Asian community, they're called tofu. They're thin on the outside, fat on the inside, right?
Mhm.
And so they may look like they're healthy. So if I just focus on weight, I'll say, well, they have a great weight. So what's
Right.
the
You
problem?
miss
Well,
the whole
you
population.
miss the whole thing. And
Yeah.
that's because they may have they use different terms to describe it, but at the end of the day, they may have fat around their organs. Visceral adiposity is the term they use. So so if I just focus on weight, I'm going to miss all of these people who may have fat around their organs, who are going to be at super high risk. And I always remember this image of a gentleman who had a large belly, and then there's this woman who was very hippie. She was more pear-shaped instead of apple-shaped. And the risk for heart disease was greater in this thinner man with a big belly. Who knew, right? So don't just focus on weight. Let's look at where the fat is, and if it's visceral fat, we're going to have trouble. I think that's part of it, and then the other part is to understand that inflammation from fat in the wrong parts of your body can be harmful. So if I have I used to deliver babies, right? And
Mhm.
when I deliver babies, uh, it actually was okay for a woman to be hippie and to have fat around their hips, because that
Right.
actually served as an energy source for her as a pregnant mom. That's a different type of fat, and the fat that's in the wrong place is going to cause inflammation and clog up the arteries and obviously lead to heart problems. So it's really important to understand that the location of the fat is important as well. And that's why the pear does okay compared to
Mhm.
the apple, which is
Mhm.
crazy.
Mhm.
So the other thing is, I think about this, the importance of, metabolic health versus fat. When I think about, like, metabolically healthy people also tend to, one of the things that you do very well is you focus on fitness, right?
Yeah.
So if I, um, if I'm fit, right, and I'm metabolically healthy, I'm probably going to be metabolically flexible, which
Okay.
means that I can take glucose and use it as a fuel source, and I can take fat and use it as a fuel source
Yeah.
more effectively than a person who may be just focused on just losing weight. So being metabolically healthy just gives you some flexibility that you would not otherwise have. So that's another reason that I think about. And
Mhm.
and when you think about dietary patterns, so before I started my journey, I was a vegetarian, and so I was kind of into the low fat thing. I was
Woo.
the calorie restriction. I was like,
Yeah.
I was like grazing like a cow, eating all the time. But but when it comes to metabolic health, you're going to do a better job if you have a dietary pattern that reduces carbs. That's good, because what happens, one thing I'll never forget, this study, and I can't remember the exact quote, the author, but in this study, if you lost, like, let's just say you lost 50 pounds, but in order to maintain that weight loss, you actually had to reduce your calories, even though that's not a great way to measure it,
Yeah.
about 500 a day. So if you needed 2,500, you needed 2,000 to maintain. But with the low carb diet, you could literally, it was like 100 less instead of 500. So in
Mhm.
terms of maintaining weight loss, it was so much easier to do it that way. So the dietary pattern that I prefer for people to use to achieve metabolic health would be carb restriction. But keeping that in mind, it's just easier,
Yeah.
and it's just better. So those are the things that come to mind. So what I tell people in general, stop using the scale to kind of judge your success, right? Let's stop doing that right now. If
Okay.
you don't want to starve to death, which is what I was doing when I was a vegetarian, eat a low carb diet, and you will be full most of the time. And in general, focus on metabolic health instead of the scale to achieve your weight loss goals. Because if you do that, your risk for all of those chronic medical conditions that I've mentioned will plummet. So that's kind of how
Yeah.
I look at it, and I appreciate that.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that the reason we don't focus on fat loss is because fat loss is a symptom of metabolic dysfunction, just like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, insulinemia, hyperinsulinemia, any of those other things. So it's not the cause of, it's just a symptom of.
Yeah, and
So
and hell, I learned the same lesson when I learned about diabetes. A blood sugar is a symptom. It's not the cause of,
yeah,
it's insulin resistance. We can maybe say that, but we shouldn't say. So I think you're right. I think it's reframing how we think about these things. And once we understand, literally hyperinsulinemia, insulin resistance leading to metabolic dysfunction is the root cause of most problems. It's not the fat, it's not the high sugar. And again, if you have large people who are healthy, then you can't blame the fat. It should
mm,
be very logical if you think about it that way, but most people haven't really paused long enough to make that connection.
sure, sure. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you very much, Dr. Tony. We're going to be doing a longer video. So if you like what you hear here, go back and check out my YouTube channel, get the rest of the good stuff from
The
Dr.
good
Tony.
stuff. I love it.
Appreciate you being on, man. Thanks.
All right. Appreciate you.